In 1891, John Graybill captured the inside of American Horse's home, a woman of the Oglala Nation. The photo opens a window into that community's daily life. Objects, the layout of the space, and signs of togetherness show how the home organized family life and gatherings with their own, the core of work, affection, and memory. A moment that preserves habits and relationships. Geronimo, called in Apache Goya'ale or Goyathle, moves through Old West history as a symbol of resistance. Leader of the Chiricahua, he led ambushes, escapes, and negotiations, keeping his people's autonomy alive. He faced U.S. pressure over Apache lands and the Mexican campaigns, leaving a strategic legacy. Among the Yuma, an indigenous people of Arizona, feelings found a sound. Young men courted by playing the flute. More than a rite, this practice was a conversation in melody, an invitation, and a promise. Around 1885, Isaiah West Tabor captured one of those moments. A Yuma musician, focused, turned silence into a gesture of affection that crosses time. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In the image, we follow a decisive moment in the life of a Dakota woman. She prepares buffalo hide, a task that sustains the community and preserves knowledge. Every move reveals a practice learned from the elders. Between scraping and stretching, the hide takes shape, and the craft affirms the continuity of a story that still endures today. Even in the face of hardship, Crooked Hand's path became a guide of courage among the Pawnee. Respected by his peers, he went through battles and left a legacy that still echoes. In the accounts of anthropologist George Bird Grinnell, he appears as the greatest warrior of his tribe, a title that history confirms and preserves. Known to English speakers as Horseback, Taraquoip firmly led the Noconi Band among the Comanches. In 1873, though, life turned. A lung hemorrhage shook his health and took him off the front lines. Withdrawn to the camp, he traded war feats for quiet and care, while his leadership found new paths, more focused on the survival of the people. In 1899, the photo of Piarat, a member of the Ute people, captures an intimate moment. She holds the baby with calm and care. The scene shows more than affection. It evokes the knowledge of her community, known for shaping nature into everyday objects like cradles made of intertwined willows, a tradition cultivated by ancestral generations. In Lame Deer, Montana, photographer Julia Toole captured a scene that says a lot without words. Northern Cheyenne girls play intently, tracing stories around dolls made of deerskin. Between laughter and careful gestures, the community's daily life appears whole, revealing care, memory, and learning passed from hand to hand. In 1860, when the Apaches captured Felix Ward, breechcloths and moccasins still marked the group's identity. 17 years later, on the Camp Verde Reservation in Arizona, the scene had changed. Pieces of white clothing had entered indigenous daily life. In the photo, Ward, second from the right, personifies that shift, a clear sign of cultural shock and adaptation. In 1891, John Graybill recorded a Brule Lakota camp near the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. The row of tipis laid out on the plain reveals the daily life and relationships of that people. The image works as a historical document, bringing today's gaze closer to the routes, rhythms, and choices of the Brule at the end of the 19th century. John Grass holds a central place in indigenous U.S. history. A leader of the Dakota Sioux, he guided his people in times of conflict and negotiation, leaving marks that cross generations. His legacy connects courage and diplomacy, echoing in the community's memory and in the, at times tense, dialogue between indigenous nations and the American government. Thanks to his fame, Geronimo, the Apache leader, gained unusual prominence. He became the center of a parade that brought together chiefs from various indigenous nations. The march, meant to display strength and unity, took place in front of President Theodore Roosevelt. It was a symbolic gesture that recognized his path and the indigenous presence in the country's history. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Uriwichi, known as Jack Tendoy, led the Shoshone at a decisive moment. On May 14, 1880, He took part in the delegation that negotiated a crucial treaty, representing the Lemhi and Fort Hall agencies. His firm's strategic role helped steer complex conversations and defend his people's interests before the authorities. In 1900, on the threshold of the 20th century, George Bird Grinnell, driven by his appreciation for Blackfoot culture, invited photographer Edward Curtis to a unique endeavor: to record, in images and accounts, the life of that people. The proposal brought together research and testimony, paving the way for a collection that sought to preserve memories in a time of rapid change. In the scene, a Hidatsa hunter commands the landscape as he climbs a large rock that opens to a wide valley. He holds an eagle with respect, a gesture that reveals a spiritual bond and the community's collective memory. His steady gaze and the height of the cliff lead the narrative. Strength, protection, and belonging gathered in a single moment. In the turbulent 1880s, the advance of the U.S. cavalry intensified clashes with indigenous peoples. In this setting emerges Apache Kid, a figure who defies labels. Among his own, he was known as Haskai by Naintail, a name that carries a foreshadowing: brave and tall and will meet a mysterious end. His path was beginning to take shape there. The image shows a Sioux child, a starting point to remember a people who carry living traditions and ties to the land. Also called Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, the Sioux bring together different indigenous nations who, over centuries, occupied the Great Plains of North America, shaping cultures, roots, and memories across that vast territory. In 1868, during a Nez Perce delegation's visit to Washington, D.C., one record gained historical weight: the portrait of Chief Kalkalshwatash. In the image, he appears in traditional dress, a sign of identity and leadership. The click creates a bridge between the American capital and his people's roots, preserving in an instant the memory of a culture. After serving as the governor's field secretary in the Bannock War in 1878, Major Lee Morehouse took over the Umatilla Indian Reservation Agency in Oregon in 1889. From then on, he began documenting daily life and cultural expressions in Umatilla County and the Columbia Basin, building a collection that keeps the region's memory alive. In 1908, Edward Curtis recorded a healing ceremony of the Arikara people called the Men of the Night. The rite, with ancient roots, brought together songs, gestures, and silence as a collective petition. It was a way to speak with nature, asking for rain and food to sustain the community. By capturing the scene, Curtis preserved a rare meeting of memory, faith, and survival. In 1859, James Dempsey Hutton captured a scene that would pave the way for the visual documentation of the Arapaho. In the image, members of the tribe pose, and on the right appears Warshinun, a reference point for identifying the group. The photograph marks a beginning, one of the first records and a milestone in the history of photography. It's also a milestone of ethnographic recording. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In a moment of deep surrender, a man of the Crow Nation, the Absaroki, took part in the ancestral Sundance ritual. It wasn't just a ceremony, it was an inner passage, guided by faith and purpose. Every gesture called for courage, every silence demanded endurance, on a path that joined body, spirit, and the people's memory. Among the Apache, women were known for their mastery of basket weaving, knowledge passed from mother to daughter, guarding rites and techniques. A 1903 portrait by Edward Curtis shows an artisan at work. In her focused movement, collective memory is woven and the people's identity is confirmed, a tradition that remains alive. In 1873, Timothy O'Sullivan photographed, near Old Fort Defiance in New Mexico, a scene that leads us to the heart of Navajo daily life. Through the lens, with documentary clarity, we see gestures, objects, and territories. A window into a time when the community reaffirmed its culture and its attentive relationship with the land that sustained it. In 1908, in Taloga, Oklahoma, photographer Dedrick captured Hunting Horse, a Kiowa leader, next to his daughters. The image takes us from family intimacy to collective memory, a man whose life spanned a century, reaching 107 years. Facing the camera, he seems to unite past and future, condensing stories that still echo. In northeastern Arizona, a scene of Hopi culture is revealed. A woman kneels and calmly combs the young girl's hair, shaping it into spirals. The ritual, passed down from generation to generation, announces the girl's passage into the marriageable stage. Between hands and silence, the community recognizes the new chapter. In view of the desert, the gesture confirms the bond with the ancestors.